Oh boy, the Raiders are back, and so am I. Hello again there, friends and fans. Raptor here. Welcome back to Farthest Frontier. An update has come out for this game. You've probably seen it out before on the channel. We took a look at this in a live stream of the most recent update for Farthest Frontier, which adds a lot of new brick buildings and other things that you can build, including decorations, updates for tutorials, and more. Right now we're being raided by the lovely neighbors. Unfortunately, the game is still a little slow in its frame rate, both in when you build a city and also kind of like when you load in and such. And I continuously am hoping that the developers improve upon a lot of the back-end functionality of the game to make it better, faster, and smoother. But it is still a hell of a lot of fun. And I wanted to thank all of you for watching the channel, by the way. Today in the United States is the it's Thanksgiving. It's Thanksgiving Thursday and the day to be thankful. So thank you very much for all your support and hanging out, and welcome aboard. We're going to check this out for a little while. We're going to see if the battle goes our way and also take a look at a few of the new things that have been added to the game ever since its initial drop. Of course, now the game has a lot of options for fixing what was a lower or slower supply of stone, and it looks like raiders are even more aggressive than before. Apparently, yes, the enemies are harder than ever before to defeat. And I think actually we had some troops in the garrison there. But I want to see how things play out with these towers. The defense here in this old city of Raptoria, whatever we called it many a time, has a lot of defenses in the south here where there's like a lovely gate and a beautiful little castle there, almost like a castle, tier 2 barracks. But in terms of survival city builders, this is amongst one of the best, as well as all the options for farming. It's really something I want to see the farming techniques in this game brought to Manor Lords, for example. And many people will ask, what do you prefer, Manor Lords or this? And I've got to say both, because Farthest Frontier channels a lot of what I like about Anno 1800 and Anno 1404 into a game that seems to be somewhere in between both in terms of its time frame and also its play style. But Manor Lords plays a lot more like Foundation and Ostriv, which are two fantastic games as well. So we're really getting into a period where it's like games are starting to be more of one thing than the other. They kind of swing back and forth between what kind of a game that they're like with their own play style. And so a lot of games are mimicking other types of play styles but are completely different on their own. For example, you don't necessarily get invaded in Manor Lords at the moment. When we played the demo, it was all simply just a peaceful city builder, and in Anno 1800 it's a long time to build up for what is inevitably ship combat, only naval combat. But in this game we get to build walls and defenses and towers and troops, which really are cool for all the upkeep and, you know, how we can actually mine the iron ourselves and then eventually smelt it to make armor and weapons, and then eventually train troops, which is something you can also do in Foundation. So a lot of these games come together, and you may have seen them many times on the channel. I'd say we got destroyed here a little bit. Honestly, maybe not so much, because the enemy did come through and destroy one of our barracks, but that's something that we can easily rebuild. So what's new in this update, right? We got to take a look at all the new stuff. If we take a peek here at some of the decorations that are available, we're loading an old previous save of Farthest Frontier, but we're able to see all the new stuff in it, including the ability to put down new types of crates and barrels and ornamental trees. These are all great things for desirability, which a lot of players have found to be quite challenging in the game, to find out how much decor is needed and how to build it in advance. And that's something that I had to learn too, by building all sorts of different parks and different types of what do they call them, plazas? Yeah, large parks. And actually they're not really plazas, but they're kind of just more brick areas. They call them plazas, but I don't feel like it's complete until you put like a statue in. So it's like you can make your own custom thing. Oh, it looks like our village is low on laborers. It might be because maybe there was a recent attack. But look at this. Population's almost up over close to 600, which is an amazing feat in this game. We've been playing this here for probably about maybe 50 hours or so for this city itself. And there's a lot of defenses. Oh, we were also attacked here, too. You can see a little bit of damage to the fort here. Rallying the troops. Ah, yes, a lot more tutorials now for when you're getting raided, how to deal with the raiders and how to rally your troops. Of course, now the enemy is a lot more aggressive, so apparently more raiders will come, and they're more aggressive than ever before. Looks like there's also been some updates to how the farms and barns work. And I think overall there's been a lot of tweaks to just building functionality and supply chains and things being indicated here differently, including how the grazing works too. So it looks like they've actually kind of changed that a little bit. How do we redo the grazing areas here? Looks like we can now have up to 4 workers, as were before. I think it was just 2, and then I don't think when you upgraded it would go to 4. I think it was always just 2. But it looks like there's more options for, and they've done a lot more detail for things like fodder quality and how to set auto milking on. Like there's no reason that they don't milk now. So there's some changes to the barns where automatically cows will be milked, and the milk will be in the storage, and or it goes to waste, or it goes to market, one of the two. So there's no more milking off. It's always on. It's just whether or not it's being delivered. And it looks like a lot of options to finally auto slaughter, which means that, like, for example, if you have a capacity of 20 cows and you set it to 18, then once it hits 20 maximum, then it'll, kill 2 of the cows, slaughter them, and bring all that meat to market. But, oh boy. And a lot of people were saying they were having trouble with abandoned buildings because this update also makes it so that way the the desirability and some things have changed. It looks like they've modified the desirability a little bit to be even more challenging. So there's even more of a pull onto the large statues and other decorative items to make them a lot more important. So one of the things that I'm noticing here is that our city previously was perfect for how it was set up to support the manors. These tier 3 homes, almost going to tier 4, were perfectly supported by the current setup of the plazas and such in the middle. In fact, you can see a large theater here, tier 2 park, a large paved park, a market, and even more, even more helpful hints, but even more decorations and such around. So we got some beautiful walkways here and really set up gorgeously. Really nice looking, and more options for statues and things, but still not enough. So they've made it a lot more challenging to do. Our population now, wow, look at that, dropping from 5. I think we were at almost 570 to now 456. So losing 100 there just from an update like that. So this is the first time going back and taking a look at an old save and seeing how the new update can affect that. So it certainly is something that could completely destroy a city, especially if you have it perfectly balanced for a previous parameter. Once the game has been updated, it could really hurt your city. Looks like more people want to move in. Let's go ahead and accept them because I feel like some may move out based on the homes. Now there should be ways to reclaim these homes if the desirability bumps back up again. Let's take a look here. I think by pressing G we can see desirability. So purple would be the best. And look at that. It's still not enough for some of these homes at like 78%. They want even more. So we're approaching like 80. But I think we need to be at 80 in order to be acceptable. So that's quite interesting. Wow. Almost looks like a weather report. Some severe weather in the middle, but yet still not enough. That's crazy. So some of those new decorative items are going to help, as well as new activities for your people. So if we take a look at amenities and services, we now have a festival pole. So that kind of adds desirability, but also seems like an activity for the villagers that's somewhat different than just putting down a park, for example. Here we have like the market, which of course is kind of a necessity. We have the trading post, which of course is needed for the trade, and also the theater, which is required for some of the further upgrades. I believe it's for upgrading the town hall to the next tier. I think you have to have that before you get to tier 4, I believe, is at least one of those built. In this city, we have 3 theaters, one here in the center and one in the north and south in the middle. So we might need more theaters, but it's really impressive to me that people living across from a theater and a park with a marketplace nearby are immediately moving out. So let's go ahead and build the festival pole. We'll, on another day, take a look at how we could save this city and try to make it a little bit more fixed up for the new requirements. You know, we'll make some changes to make sure that it functions a little bit better. We'll put the maypole down now, though, and we'll try to rebuild some of the buildings that we've lost. I think there's a new function now to be able to multiple... I think there's a way to now prioritize wall building, so we can actually rebuild sections of the wall and prioritize their construction. So here we've gotten the wall somewhat destroyed, and we need to rebuild that. So if we click on the wall itself, we can now increase or decrease the wall sections. That was the watchtower. But yeah, now we can finally increase the priority of wall sections. Before we couldn't, and so if you were going to build a wall, you had to basically cancel all other construction projects so the people would work on it. Otherwise, there was nothing they could do. They would not work on that. They would prioritize other projects because it was something you couldn't prioritize at all. But this village looks really gorgeous, and I cannot get over the seasonal transitions in this game and in Manor Lords and Austrive as well. I do think Manor Lords does it a little more realistically, let's say, but this game is a little bit more cinematic with the you can see leaves blowing across the screen. You can see, of course, the rain and snow coming in as you're forced to be a little more zoomed in. Manor Lords, of course, allows you to zoom out to almost like a orbital level, or at least like being in an aircraft. As where this is almost like being on a, almost like in a church tower if it were large enough, or at least it feels like it. But anyway, so this city, as we were designing it, has its own problems with things like orchards and, you know, lack of variety of food here and there. But the biggest problem now will come down to the availability of housing. So that's going to all now be down on the different types of parameters for the desirability. But luckily, all the lower tier homes are still rather happy. So if we take a look, wow, look at that. Manor here at almost, wow, this house could actually go from tier 3 to 4. So I believe the houses are shelter, homestead. I believe it's, what is the tier 3? Here's the homesteads here. Tier 3, I forget what that's called. Large house? Yeah, large house, manor, and then whatever the final home may be. Whatever the tier 4 home ends up being, maybe a nicer house of some sort. But it's going to be quite challenging to make sure that all these houses are higher than that. We're now having problems with gold, it seems. Yeah, it looks like there needs to be trading going on here. It's not performing. That might actually be why these houses were dropping a bit. Perhaps. But as I loaded in here, a raid immediately began, and we're in the full season, and now spring, of course, is when the traders come in. Now, one of the greatest things the devs have done is they've improved upon the trading. One of the first major updates was to notify you when traders are here. So if you haven't seen the game in a while, both on the channel and also just in general, if you own it or you've been thinking about getting it, one, Steam for the last couple of days and probably for the next few weeks will have a Steam sale, and this game could be a part of it. Just make sure you check and take a look at any city builder game to make sure it's on sale. It's a good one to get. But if you haven't played in a while, the two recent updates have really made it a lot more fun to get started and grow your city. But as you can see, it's rather atrocious with the I mean, just looking at the city here, our frame rate, I believe if we press like F2 or something like that, there's a way to bring it up on screen, but we're probably sitting at about 10 frames for what could be at least 30. I think minimum 30 to see people walking around would be fantastic. We're not seeing a lot of movement in this game aside from people walking and smoke coming out of the chimneys and leaves and birds and stuff flying around. So it's not like there's a lot of movement on the screen, but there's a lot of calculating going on of people going to their jobs and going on patrol for the military or bringing cows in and to and from the barns. So I think the best way to learn everything that would be new too is exactly what we're doing here, which, by the way, if you want to know how to do these blueberry farms, make sure you check the channel too. There's a little tutorial video on how to set up all these blueberry farms, which can be really great for getting enough preservatives for the winter. Still, though, the biggest problem, of course, is getting those to the preservist with enough glass to actually be able to boil them or do whatever to prepare them for the winter. You can never have enough glass in this game. Even with big money Masook rolling in, if you buy glass and sand and have multiple glass makers, it goes by very quickly, but increases people's happiness. And despite all the problems in the city, everybody is still rather happy. So at least our farm there is probably contributing to that by adding a variety of food. Entertainment is their biggest problem right now, and that's due to the money flow, which maybe we have a ton of cash sitting at the trading post. Let's take a peek. Oh, and a nice, big helpful tip for learning the market. That's fantastic. Must have been a lot of feedback on that, watching other tutorial videos, including my own. I'm sure that they thought there could be some helpful tips on showing how to trade and what each indicator of, like, for example, what does 245 down here mean? It's the number of item in storage and that kind of thing. So super helpful, and you can turn that on and off at any time. So lots of more helpful hints for people who are thinking about getting into it. Oh, it looks like we have about 10,000 here sitting in the treasury, so let's transfer all that over so we can put on some more shows. I think we could do shows once a month, so at least that solves the money issue. Plus, we were in the positive because we're making a lot of money from gold mining here. In fact, I think we can see that manufacturing is bringing in plus 300, which almost pays for all the soldiers. In fact, the luxury taxes, manufacturing, and market square taxes alone pay for the military, and everything else is just a surplus, which is pretty helpful. But man, this game is certainly more complicated than ever before now with the desirability, and really requires a lot of pre-planning to your city layouts. What's going on here? Oh, we got a villager trapped behind the wall. Well, she was. I just noticed she didn't have food. She must have came in here to rebuild something or repair and then got trapped next to the tower. Well, that's a problem. Yeah, we can't make like a little door or something like that for her to get through. Oops, sorry, ma'am. Looks like a gate was destroyed too, so she must have been trying to repair something. And that body will rot there forever until we, well, basically destroy the wall and somebody brings her off to our cemeteries, which I believe we built a very gorgeous, national cemetery up here. And as you can see, I think at this point in the game, we've had more deaths from old age than, like, military and disease combined. So, you know, like, probably 2 of these, like 1.5 has probably been through, who knows, starvation and invasion and bear attacks and whatever, and everything else has been old age. And one thing that's cool in the game, too, is that the nicer the tombstone, I think it's been reflected on the nicer life that they've had. So, you know, like a small little stone is somebody who died early or poor, unfortunately. And some of these nicer markers are for people who've led fulfilling lives at the marketplace or were a rich gold craftsman or something, or a jeweler, whatever. Maybe a blacksmith, that kind of thing. Well, we've got plenty of hospitals in the town. The only thing now is the housing. I still want to see a change to this, though. I think this is still confusing for a lot of players, both the building being condemned and a building being abandoned, and also the desirability. And I find it kind of wacky sometimes that if a play doesn't happen at the theater, that these people are willing to uproot their lives and completely move out of the town just because one, you know, like the Wizard of Oz didn't play at the theater. I'm hoping that in the future there's a little bit more leniency from the people before they move out, and a building actually downgrades so that way people can move in and the building can be at least made use of until it then upgrades again, to where you'd have to, maybe that's your punishment, is paying the upgrade cost. Now this is very similar to the Emperor or the Pharaoh or the Caesar Sierra City builders, where when a building is upgraded, it's because all the prerequisite requirements have been met and then a building upgrades. It's the same how it is in Anno too, like for example with the workers, providing them with enough sausage, coffee, bread, beer, etc. allows them to give you more tax dollars, and of course then are easily upgradable to the artisans, that kind of thing. So yeah, here we are. We've got indicators of a building going to be abandoned because the desirability dropped. I'm assuming it's mostly because the wow, that's amazing. If desirability near this building doesn't improve, it will be abandoned. But yeah, this building's desirability is at 108%. Oh, that's so weird. I'm not sure if that's because this is a loaded save, and so maybe that's not entirely accurate, or if they're going to abandon their house because their neighbor is going to abandon their house at a small 95% desirability. Who knows? But even this house here with the 101 is still stating that everybody's threatening to move out due to desirability. That's crazy. Which means that holding those festivals and holding those parties is incredibly important. We're still waiting over here for the festival poll to be completed, but I feel like this game could certainly use events that you could hold to boost desirability for the whole town and for happiness, and to promote things like immigration and procreation and maybe battle and stuff like that. In fact, Anno will have certain types of festivals, cultural festivals, beer Harvest Fest, for example, all based on your people's, you know, if things are good, then they're really, really good, and people want to celebrate the good times. So hopefully that comes to this game soon as well. I still want to do more series on Farthest Frontier. For those of you missing it or want to see more live streams, it's just this incredibly low frame rate that kind of just is a little off-putting, especially since some of the requirements in the game are to get your populations large enough to go to the next tier. I think this tier is required at like 300 or 400. Here we're almost at 600, and I could imagine the end game being around almost 1,000 people. But you know, you're kind of punished for having a city this large, for example. So it's interesting to see. But I still want to see more for the military invasions. I think they've done some good jobs. This is, by the way, the hardest difficulty in the game that this is set to right now. And according to what I've read, that the starting difficulties or the easier difficulties are easier. You can better adjust things like food spoilage, or you can make it hard, and hard is now truly hard. So harder military invasions, harder raids, and more invaders that will come in, and more difficulty to preserving food. So this is still set to the hardest difficulty, and so I think now that the update is here, previous saves that were set to hard are now even harder. So hopefully that is the case. I do like to play this on the hardest difficulty. It's just fun to take your time, and this game is no joke where it takes, 50 years or so to build a wall. The time it takes to gather the materials, to build the stuff, to gather the materials, to then have enough workers to then build the wall, and then people to defend the wall. It's not just like it gets built in a year, and there you go. So it's certainly a game that feels accurate in the amount of time that it takes to do things. And beautiful. I truly think that grid-based builder games such as Farthest Frontier are here to stay. And I want to see more games like that, like in Manor Lords. I hope we get more 3D, fully realistic, massive games on huge scales. And then games like this where you're just defending a city that is just starting over a couple hundred years and that can defend itself over countless invasions and such. And this city was brutal to defend too, by the way. Even on the previous hardest difficulty, we've had to build multiple barracks, as you can see here, multiple towers to cover each other, and walls that are starting to stretch around the whole perimeter of the city, where I want to keep everything protected because it's all valuable, from the cows to the glassware makers, and even the military itself is valuable. We want to try to make the wall the first defense, which is why we're building towers and such. Typhoid, not a problem. We've still got plenty of hospitals for that. Looks like the education and religion are not yet fully implemented in the game yet either. Just as a reminder, when your people are educated, that there's only 2 jobs that the educated can have in the game at the moment. People who are educated can then become teachers to then educate other people to become teachers, so you can have more and more teachers who then can become doctors. Essentially, when you build a school, it's like you're just building a medical school. Educated people in education can then allow people to work at the healer's hut or the hospital, and that's great. But it's not required for things like, for example, the theater, or for the, let's say, like the accounting office or marketplaces, that kind of thing. There's not an accounting office, but what I mean is that there's really no job that requires education other than that. And so that's something that they'll expand upon in the future. Still no ability to move the graveyards or deal with death other than by building those types of cemeteries. And also, there's no religion in the game yet either. There's no churches or cathedrals. I think they're still debating on how they want to do that. If they want to make the buildings separate, where you can build a small church and then a large cathedral, or if it's going to be upgradable like how it is with the theaters. Preferably, I'd like to see it being separate buildings, like with the healer's hut, the size of the healer's hut for a small chapel or church, and then the ability to build a separate cathedral, or maybe have multi-level churches and then have a cathedral be a separate tier 3, no, maybe more like tier 4 or tier 5 building. I would love to see that. And in fact, like how it works in Kingdoms and Castles, you can build a church out of stone in Kingdoms and Castles, but you can also build a cathedral. So it'd be nice to build a big church, but also a big cathedral, which are 2 separate buildings. And again, that would be awesome for it to have a massive boost to desirability, both in its architecture and for its bonus. And I would love to see production chains for that too, meaning paper and candles and other things being delivered to it. Oh my goodness, our boy is here. Here comes the money from Big Money Masook. Let's see what he's trading now. Oh yeah, we could trade a lot of stuff with our friend here. Our money problems are solved for now. Getting some good cash from him. Oh, and look at this. We can also sell a lot of preserves, although I would rather keep that. And same with the glass and cheese and other things, but we might be able to buy weapons in the future and sell those to him. In fact, actually, we could sell 20 of these. Let's go ahead and sell half. The trading works just like it always did. There's just more helpful hints for it, so nothing really of note has changed here aside from more helpful hints and or notifications of who showed up and what they're trading. It's nice that it actually shows who is here too, rather than just a generic, hey, a trader's here, like you get the ding, but then you see who it is, so you can kind of figure that out. Builders are falling behind in repairs. Interesting. Oh, what was that massive notification there? All right, let's see our labor for now. That's another major thing for these updates too, is the amount of labor that's needed for upkeep. Look at that, 34 laborers, and yet we can't keep up with that. But yet we still need to hire people for guards. We still need to have, food is important. I mean, we can't really take away from the number of farmers that we want, or people may die. for lack of food. I mean, we could definitely get all the buildings repaired, but who's going to live in them if that's the case? Oh boy, but people will die of exposure this winter, or maybe next winter. Actually, nobody died of exposure, did they? They preferred to live outside rather than live in these homes, and yet they didn't die of exposure. Interesting. So we're going to have to figure out a way to... Yeah, this is going to be interesting. If I wanted to salvage a save, if a player is salvaging a save for future playthroughs or for future updates, it's going to be interesting to see how to navigate that, because you're going to have to go... You can make the best city in the world now, and then if the rules change, it could be horrible, based on having too many homes close to each other, which could spread disease too quickly, versus having not enough wells for fire prevention, that kind of thing. They could change things anytime. We got a lot of rats and other problems here too. But again, we're not here just to kind of like continue a series or continue a city. I just wanted to make it known that the update is out. There's a long way to go, I think, for performance. It doesn't feel like it's getting the attention that it should, but there's a hell of a lot of improvements for the player, at least in order to play the game a lot more effectively and to be able to learn the game a lot more effectively, though I want to see more love for the end game, especially since, one, Tier 5 isn't here yet. Tier 4 is not really fleshed out, and when you get to these high tiers, the frame rate is just, it's truly unplayable. I hate to use that word, but that's my biggest complaint so far, is that it's such a good game, and I don't want to see the performance hinder its success, and I want it to continue to succeed. Especially because I like seeing the enemy try to attack the walls and towers, and in Manor Lords, of course, we will have more army versus army, but here it's truly invader versus like small defense force. An army of almost 200 people will attack a city of 600, and then you know, you've got about 50 troops or so plus towers to defend them. In fact, if we take a look at our military, currently we're defending with about 76 guards or 76 people in the towers, and then about 28 troops, which we have capacity for maybe double that. Maybe almost triple that. Wow, lots of traders are coming in. Fantastic. We'll worry about that later. But anyway, but I love to see this game's fertility. This might be one of the tutorials we saw earlier. Yeah, we're seeing a lot more helpful hints and stuff than ever before. Crop rotation, of course, is all the same. Apparently, they've picked up the amount of diseases that can occur. It was very rare that diseases would happen, but the cool thing is that every disease for every crop is here. It's not just like, oh, the crops are sick. We actually have an explanation of what wheat leaf blotch is, or what stem rot is, depending on what you're growing. So it's really cool that they've got all these crops, and then typical afflictions for those crops, and then possible ways to fix that, which typically is by having them harvested faster, so putting more labor towards that, more care towards that, and then also increasing the fertility and lowering weed level and rockiness. Even with that, even with weed level at 0, rockiness at 0, and fertility at 100%, we're still getting some problems here. So it's not perfect, and that's really cool, because, you know, this is how things were done. Wow, there's a lot of cattle out there. Gonna have to take a look at how they do things. But yeah, great to see improvements coming to the game continuously. By the way, this came out about a week ago, this update, officially, but we took a look at it probably about a month before then. So more balancing and more community feedback went into this. Although I think no matter if you have an update, if it's going to shake your city like this, I think this is actually a good thing, because it means enough has changed to where the game changes in a way to either make it more challenging or in a way that the players wanted it to be. And I think that's just fantastic. And I hope to see the developers continue to add more challenges to the game, realism-wise. More invading armies, more disease, more crop disease, more more needs for the people, more ways to make them happy, more ways to make money, right? More things to be made that people might want in their homes, and more things to trade from the traders, and also more weapons and such to defend and attack with. The enemy gets battering rams, and they get apparently will have trebuchets and catapults in the future, according to what I've heard. So I would love to see it be a thing in the future to where we get more and more enemy types and more ways to defend ourselves too. Maybe cavalry, horses, bigger maps, more stable maps, larger and different biomes perhaps too. Although this is mostly based on what seems to be Central Europe, but it would be neat to be able to see different types of landscape, or maps based on different parts of the world, like fjords or muddier islands or hilly landscape, which we already have, but more things to come. So there is a complete list of patch notes on this as well. If you're really wanting to get into the nitty-gritty of what has changed and what they have planned for the future, there's much more to come along, including, again, new buildings like we saw with the festival poll, new requirements for the houses and for the people via desirability, new functions and fixes for things like the vault, where money would be stored differently and separately, more improvements needed there, and more improvements to come, changes to the barn and how cattle and the barn itself functions and how it gives milk constantly, where it then can go straight to the cheesemaker or to the market, and more resource buildings, like, for example, deeper mining that will come along in the future to make it so that way your ore deposits will last for a very long time, rather than just having to constantly move and then eventually importing those. But also defenses, more defensive walls and things of that nature, which would be fantastic to see. And speaking of walls, there is new walls for separating your districts and decorating them. It would be fantastic now to put a wrought iron fence around a theater and kind of make it look like its own park area. And you can kind of do the same with tier 3 hedges and iron fences, which again just adds to the bouge, as well as cobbled roads that seemingly look a little different now. It looks like they're more lavender here in the menu for building, but it's the exact same. Like, I don't see any changes to how the roads look in the game, but it would be cool to be able to do maybe some brick roads, like how it is in the park at certain areas, at least to put it around the park to make it look nice as well. So, and I'm not sure, yes, this does not raise desirability at all, so it's kind of more of your own desirability, just kind of how things look. Like, for example, down here, me putting trees on every other grid square to make it look nice around the industrial areas, and trying to have as many trees here to just make things look nice. That's all. And I like that a lot. And of course, all the new decorative options, including the flower urn. And I think there might be new statues, maybe not, but regardless, I want more. Even if they added 10 more, I'd still want more statue types for both the small, medium, and large statues. And of course, barrels, which again, don't add to the desirability. But I think if something's going to take resources and it doesn't provide anything like that, it should have a small boost to it. But again, a lot of things just make it more fun to play. All right, thanks everybody for all of your support for 2022. Happy Thanksgiving to all you Americans and Canadians too, who celebrated previously. And thanks for all your thanks for the tips that I provided, and thanks for your giving tips back that I didn't think of, or new things that we learned, or trying to be helpful to other new players, and just being awesome in the community in general. In live streams and videos, you guys have proven time and time again to be awesome, and I really appreciate the support. So thank you very much for all your kindness this year. We got a ways to go now until the end of the year as well, so I hope to see you back for more awesome survival city builders, more simulator games, and survival games of all different types of nature, and I hope to see you all very soon in more updates to Farthest Frontier, out now on Steam. I'll see you all soon. Goodbye, everybody. Take care.